Hello, hello, hello. Once again, God bless each of you. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure that you watch to the very end. I won't be very long today. I'll probably be about 12 minutes. I need you to listen. I need you to learn and be blessed from this lesson. So please, let's just go ahead and get into the worship. Into the lesson and into these just very few brief announcements that I just need to share with you on today. Let's go ahead and see there what we have for us this week. I know this week has been a taxing and a busy week, and you just need to see what then is God up to even right now. Of course, I always begin with giving opportunities. There may be somebody who is watching this for the first time, or you watched enough and you just have not had the opportunity to give. But please make sure that you do send an offering to any of those addresses, to Givelify, or stop by the church on Sunday morning and bring your offering. Thank you so very kindly for those of you who have been so faithful in your giving. I'm grateful to you. Also, the Shreveport District Sunday School every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Join the Zoom meeting by phone or by Zoom passcode, and there are the numbers there for you. Tomorrow, of course, as every Sunday, we will have in-person and virtual worship each Sunday at 11 o'clock. We know that a lot of you are watching on Facebook and on YouTube. Let's come out to the house of the Lord and let's begin the comfortability level of being back in the house of God. We've had some people who have been faithful in their attendance. And just as you've been faithful in your attendance to the Facebook and the YouTube ministry, I'd love to see your faces in the building. We have room, and we are praying that God is also removing the restrictions through as it relates to coronavirus. So please come on in and join us inside the building. God bless you. As we know now, make sure that you have your booster shot, your vaccine, and whatever it is that you need at this time. Let's look at some March birthdays there. I have for the month of let me get back. I lost my screen there. Let me get back there. I have Sister Marjorie Bell. I have Fernanda Hudson. Looks like I have Rosetta Strickland there. Looks like I have Peaches, Willie Ned, Reverend Donnie Ned, who's celebrating a birthday, Sierra Thomas, Quincy Morgan, Sergeant Major Harris, Jan Ned, Willie Hall Jr., Florence Winder, and I believe also Brother Jimmy Flournoy from over there at the New Hope Church. Happy birthday to each of you as well. Of course, we're in the Lent season. We're in the season of Lent at this time. And so we're certainly asking that we're praying, that we are fasting, that we're giving offerings, and that we are commemorating all of the things that God has asked us to do, even in a season like this, as we reflect, as we look back, and also as we think of ways in which we can improve ourselves during this particular season. Well, let's look at the backdrop of our lesson. Of course, the backdrop of our lesson still has to do with the Babylonian captivity. The Babylonian captivity is, of course, an important period of biblical history because of the captivity and the exile. And then there's the return of the restoration for the fulfillments of Old Testament prophecies. God used Babylon. He used Persia as agents of judgment against Israel. With each rebellion against Babylonian rule, Nebuchadnezzar would lead his armies against Judah, and until they laid siege to Jerusalem for over a year, killing many people, destroying the temple, taking captive thousands of Jews, and leaving Jerusalem in ruins. As prophesied in the scriptures, the Jewish people would be allowed to return to Jerusalem after 70 years of exile. That prophecy was fulfilled in 537, and the Jews were allowed by King Cyrus to return to Israel and begin rebuilding the city and the temple. The return under the direction of Ezra led to a revival among the Jewish people and the rebuilding of the temple. Now notice here that in this particular lesson, as it is referred to as celebrating the Passover, the books of Haggai and Zechariah place the rebuilding process in the reign of King Darius, while Ezra 1 through 6 begin it with the reign of King Cyrus, but claim that the process was interrupted and only finished under the reign of King Darius, who we'll be introduced to today. Now, this lesson at a glance here talks about the people finish and rejoice, the rebuilding of the temple. And then the people of Israel offer sacrifices. And then the feasts themselves are celebrated. Notice here in this lesson, the celebration of the Passover. And on the Passover, the Jews are to recount the biblical history of their enslavement in Egypt and their liberation or exodus into freedom. The Jewish people eat and drink symbolic foods to remember what their foreparents experienced. We do that as well in the African American culture. They eat the unleavened bread to recall the hardship of oppression and how they had to flee their oppressors before their bread could rise. They eat something similar to horseradish or chicory to recall the bitterness of slavery, and haricot, a thick fruit and nut mixture, to remind them of the mortar they used as Pharaoh's slaves. And they dip greens in salt water to recall their tears. Yes, the power of the Passover moment is that it collapses the present into the past as these people begin to celebrate. It makes what was old relevant again. One rabbinic commentary explains it this way. He says, in every generation, each person is obligated to see themselves as though they too came out from Egypt. Let's look at the text. In Ezra chapter 6, beginning at verse 13, Tatanai, the governor of the province west of the Euphrates River, and Shethar-bozenai and their colleagues complied at once with the command of King Darius. So the Jewish elders continued their work, and they were greatly encouraged by the preaching of the prophets of Haggai and Zechariah. The temple was finally finished as had been commanded by the God of Israel and decreed by Cyrus first, Darius and Artaxerxes, the very kings of Persia. Look at how God uses the kings of Persia, their capitals, to help assist them in this. The temple was completed on March 12. This is a date given from Old Testament history, during the 6th year of King Darius's reign. The temple of God was then dedicated with great joy by the people of Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest of the people who had returned from Israel. They celebrated, they rejoiced. Look at what it says. It was dedicated with great joy. The church is a place that ought to be celebrated with grand openings, just as things in the world are. Have you noticed that when they build great stadiums and when they build great theaters and when they build great shopping malls or they build great buildings, there's always this great celebration that is had, or this celebration that takes place. The house of God, when it is dedicated, ought to have the same level of enthusiasm, the same level of joy that other secular things may have. In fact, even more. During the dedication ceremony for the temple of God, and keep in mind that King Darius and King Cyrus's decrees were to help these people in any way possible. So if they don't have the 100 young bulls, the 200 rams, and the 400 male lambs to be sacrificed, give them to them. The 1,200 male goats, as they were presented, the 12 male goats were presented as a sin offering for the 12 tribes of Israel. The sin offering is also referred to as the guilt offering. Oh my God, is it the guilt offering? So one goat for each of the tribes. Then the priests and the Levites were divided into their various divisions to serve at the temple of God in Jerusalem, as prescribed back in the book of Moses. The priests and the Levites had purified themselves. The priests and the Levites had purified themselves and made themselves ceremonially clean. So they slaughtered the Passover lamb, look at this, for the returned exiles, for their priests and for themselves. The Passover meal was eaten by the people of Israel who had returned from exile and the others in the land. Yes, who had turned from their corrupt practices to worship the Lord, the God of Israel. Yes, this celebration. Let me go back. There was the celebration, the rejoicing. There were the sacrifices being offered, and then the feasts themselves had to be celebrated. Look at this text. This text says, then the Passover meal, they celebrated in community. They celebrated in as a group who were thankful, and as they were looking backwards at their deliverance, they were looking forward to a great future that God, look at what it says. They celebrated the festival of the unleavened bread for 7 days, and they did it joyously. When we celebrate the Lord's Supper, when we celebrate our rituals, do we do it with joy? And they say this, there was great joy throughout the land because the Lord had caused the king of Assyria to be favorable to them, that God had moved on the heart and the mind, not just of their prophets and their people, but God had moved on the king of Assyria, their captor, to be favorable to them. You do know that God can use anybody when God gets ready to bless you. So let people bless you when they can and when they will, so that he helped them to rebuild the temple of God, the God of Israel. The king of Assyria was a warring-minded man. He was a warrior by trade and by concept and precept. But look at what God allows even the warrior to do. God allows the warrior king of another country to be favorable and to show his favor toward his people and deliver them to be able to rebuild the very temple of God itself. Tomorrow, I'm going to preach. I'm going to preach a very familiar passage, Luke chapter 15, 11 to 24. I'll probably begin at verse 1. So go ahead and read the entire 15th chapter as I talk about the prodigal son getting out of the pig pen. I'm going to preach that tomorrow. I believe you're going to be blessed as we deal with and talk about this issue, if you would, of God, his love, and his forgiveness, even in a Lenten season when we learn the importance of repentance, when we learn how to realize that I have sinned, yes, and I must return back to God. God bless you today. Thank you very kindly, and thank you very much. And I look forward to a great word and a great worship service on tomorrow. God bless you and God keep you.